Hi, my name is Guillermo Blanc and I'm a staff associate astronomer at the Carnegie Observatories. So the question is, how long are the lives of stars? How long do stars live? And in order to answer that question, we need to understand how stars work. Okay, so a star is a giant ball of gas, of mostly, this really hot plasma that it's sitting in space. And in the behavior of a star, there are two main forces that are acting. The first one is gravity. Okay, so gravity is always trying to attract every particle of the star to each other, and it's basically trying to make the star more compact and trying to make the star collapse upon itself. And the second extremely important force that's acting is actually the thermal pressure of the gas, of this plasma that forms the bulk of the star. So you can imagine this gas being extremely hot. Therefore, the particles inside the star are moving at very high speeds. And this pressure is basically what accounts for the force that prevents the star from shrinking under the effects of gravity. So stars live most of their lives in an equilibrium between gravity and the pressure that's exerted onto the gas by these thermal motions. And so what happens then is that this pressure, these thermal motions, right, the temperature of the gas comes from heat, right? And the energy that produces this heat, it's generated in the core of the star. So in the very nucleus of the star, we have nuclear fusions happening that basically convert mostly hydrogen into helium and release energy in the process. And these nuclear fusions happen in the core of the star throughout its lifetime, producing just enough heat in order to keep the star hot enough so the pressure of the gas can hold it up against gravity. Now, if a star, produces too much heat, it's going to puff up, right? And it's going to cool down, right? And eventually it's going to come back to this, equilibrium. And the same thing will happen. If the star shrinks under the effect of gravity, it's going to start producing, more energy in its center, and because the center is going to be at a higher pressure, and it's going to puff up again and come back to this equilibrium. Okay, so when you think about how long a star lives, stars basically live for as long as they have enough fuel, enough hydrogen in their cores in order to produce energy that can support them against the effects of gravity, right? And whenever they come to the ends of their lives, what happens is that the core and the inner layers of the stars starts running out of fuel, and that destabilizes the stars. The stars get out of this equilibrium, and very fast and violent processes start happening that can lead this star to become a fairly exotic object, like a black hole or a neutron star after the explosion of a supernovae, or a white dwarf with a beautiful planetary nebulae after the star ejects its outer envelopes, and that's what we call the end of the life of the star. So something interesting that happens is that for how long the star live depend a lot on how massive that star is. Stars that are very massive, that have a lot of mass, they're very heavy, and therefore the weight of all this mass, it produces a very strong gravitational pull that tries to contract this. So you have a stronger gravitational force trying to contract the star. Therefore, you need to consume a lot more fuel because you need to produce a lot more energy in order to make this star hotter. And when you make the star hotter, you also make it bluer. So massive stars are hot, they're hotter, they have temperatures of tens of thousands of degrees Celsius or Kelvin, and they're also bluer because a hotter star is going to produce more blue light than a cooler star that's going to produce more red light. So what happens is that these stars, in order to be so hot as to support and have enough thermal motions and pressure as to support their own weight, they consume their fuels very, very quickly. So they only live for a few million years, let's say, the more massive stars that we know. While small stars, right, they're not so heavy. The gravitational force or that's trying to contract them is not so strong. So they they can very, very slowly produce energy and thermal energy to, support, their weight. So they can live for, tens of billions of years. They can actually live longer than the whole history of the universe. So we have very low mass stars that were born very early on in the history of the universe and are still alive and going, and they're going to keep on going for a long time, while we have very, very massive stars that only live for a few million years, that compared to the tens of thousands of millions of years that the universe has been going, they are just like a firecracker, a spark in the history of the universe, their lives. So that's basically how long stars live.